not sure about that. I believe before I get through tonight, if you listen, you'll know. Genesis chapter 22, verse 13 tells us the ending of the story of how Abraham went, and he was going, and God had spoke to him to go and to offer Isaac. He said, your son, your only son, Isaac. And I know a lot of people want to claim a lot of different things, but according to God's eyes, Isaac was the only son Abraham had. Now we know Abraham had others, but God didn't accept them. God said, he told Abraham long before any of those children that Abraham had was born. He said, out of your seed. And he made him a lot of promises through his seed. It'd be as the sand of the sea, and all of these things would begin to take place through his seed. But you begin to look, and God said, I only count Isaac. All of those others was things, you know what, we can try to work out God's plan, but God don't recognize our plan. You look at those, and every one of those kids was born out of man trying to figure out God's ways. Out of man trying to make things happen that God, if God's made you a promise, you ain't got to make it happen. All you got to do is live for God and it'll happen. Oh, now you can't keep it from happening, but you don't need to make it happen. You just serve God. You bide your time. It will come to pass. If God said it'll come to pass, it will come to pass. So now, Abraham had went, and he was fixing to kill Isaac, offer him as a burnt offering to God, his only son, according to God. And he said, and the Bible said, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horn. And Abraham went, and he took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. From the very beginning, God knew that Abraham, if you'll obey me, I'll make a way. If Abraham had decided, I believe with all my heart, that's a little far to go to make a sacrifice. We're going to stop a few mountaintops short, and we're going to go up there. He'd have had to offer Isaac as a sacrifice because that ram would have been hung by his horns over on the mountain God told him to go to. You see, God declares things from the very beginning that will take place in the end, and it's up to me and you to follow after God's directions. If we'll follow God's directions, it will work the way God wants it to work in our life. Now let's look here. Let's go to Exodus. The very name of the book tells us what took place. The Bible lets us to know that things begin to get rough in Egypt. God had not planned on Israel staying in Egypt because he had made Abraham a promise. Abraham looked for a city whose builder and maker was God, and we know Egypt wasn't that. So he made it hard enough and bad enough that they wanted out of there. You know what? Sometimes those bad situations we get in is just to wake us up, to tell us it's time to move. It's time to get up and go. It's time to do something different. They begin to cry out, get us out of here, God. We want to go. It's bad here. It's uncomfortable here. I'm told, I've never been there. Probably never will. But I'm told that when an eagle builds their nest, and they get ready to lay those eggs. They cushion it real good with all kinds of fur and feathers and all kinds of things that is very comfortable. And they set on those eggs and they hatch it. And for a while, it's very comfortable for those little eaglets to set in. But it comes time for them to get out of the nest and quit sitting there and waiting on mama and daddy to bring them food every morning and every evening. It's time for them to be an eagle. It's time for them to get up and fly. And mama and daddy get in there and they're going to pull in that feathers out. They're going to pull in that fur out and those sticks and those stones and those briars and all of that stuff begins to poke through, and it becomes uncomfortable for those little eaglets to sit there. And before long, they're climbing up on the edge, wondering what it's like to sit somewhere else. God began to make it uncomfortable for the children of Israel, and they begin to wonder, what would it be like to be back in Canaan land? What would it be like to go back to a place where our forefathers loved and lived and called home? They begin to pray and they begin to cry out. I hate to disappoint you, but the Bible lets us to know that there's going to come a time that we're going to begin to cry out, even so come Lord Jesus. And it ain't going to be because somebody hurt our feelings somewhere. But things may get real uncomfortable before we leave this old world. And it may get to where we feel like we got more to gain by going there than we do by staying here. They begin to feel that way. The Bible tells us in chapter 3, verse 1 of Exodus, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, while the bush is not burned. The bush was burning. It was up to Moses to turn aside and to see. You see, we blame God a lot of time for things winding up like it did in our life when we didn't turn aside to see the bush. We stopped a couple of mountains short instead of going where God said go, so therefore the ram wasn't there. You see, it's up to us to do our part. God said, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to take care of that. I prepared you a place. Now it's up to you to make sure you get there. Now, Moses had went. You know the story of how that there was 9 plagues in Egypt. The first, I believe it was the first 4, was it, that covered all of Egypt. And the rest of them only covered the Egyptians. It did not affect the children of Israel. He stayed it off of them. You know, some things will affect us that God sends into the world. Some of the curses that come our way, God, that comes the world's way, is going to affect us. But when it got to the worst of the worst, God said, I'm not going to put you through that. They left. We know how that they finally got sent out. They didn't just leave, they got sent out. And then Pharaoh decided, maybe I need to go back and get them. We're going to have to start making them brick now. We did have slaves to do that. Now we're going to have to do it. I'm going to go back and get them. And God said, no, you just thought you was going to go back and get them. They got on. I was said, it's in a dry place. There wasn't no water. They was thirsty. Then they found water. And it was bad. So look here. 15 and 22 of Exodus. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. And they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. 3 days with no water is a long time with no water. And it wasn't just because all they had was Coke and coffee. They didn't have nothing to drink. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord. And the Lord showed him what? How long does it take to get a tree? It takes years. You can, I know people say, oh yeah, you can plant a tree. Well, it took years for it to become a tree to get planted. This tree wasn't planted by somebody that run in with a backhoe a few days before and set a full-grown tree. This tree grew there. You see, God knew years before they got there they was going to be coming that way, because that was the way he had for them to go. They was following the cloud. Had they decided that, you know what, that cloud can go the way it wants to go, I know where we need to go and we're going this way, they might not have ever found the water, but if they did, there might not have been no tree there by the water they found either. But where God sent them, they found water, but it was bitter. But God had already put a tree there. And he showed that tree to Moses, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. God moved because they followed after his will. He had done declared some things from the beginning. It looked like they had messed up. They had went where there was no water. And then when there was water there, it was bitter. But God had already seen the need. And he already had planted a tree. And it had already grew. And then he showed Moses which tree. And when Moses took that tree and he cut a part of it and he threw it into the water, the Bible said that water was no longer bitter, but it became sweet. Oh, what I'm saying is when things come our way, and we wonder why, Lord, why is it happening? Let me tell you something. God has a plan, and you just hang on. You just wait. He's got a plan there. He's been working on it since before you ever started that way. That tree was growing before they ever left Egypt. They hadn't even started in that direction. And said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, and wilt give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees. And they encamped there by the waters. In case you don't know this, I know everybody here knows this, or at least please don't admit it if you don't. Was in New York or somewhere, I might expect you not to know, but here I expect everybody here to know this. Wells don't get there by themselves. Wells have to be dug. They wasn't 1, 2, 5, but the Bible said they were 10 wells there. God had done sent somebody along that had an itching to dig, Brother Mike. And they done went to digging, and they struck water, and they did all they could do, and they moved over somewhere, and they went to digging again, and they struck water, and they did all they could do in that well, and they moved on. Oh, what I'm saying, 10 wells were dug there because God knew they was coming that way, and He prepared it for them. But it only happened because, look what He said in verse 26, going back up. If thou wilt diligently hearken to my voice, if you'll listen, if you'll pay attention, if you'll give an ear, if you'll do that which is right, all those things was there. He said, if you'll just pay attention to where I'm going to lead you, I've already got provision waiting. I've already got things out there. It may look like it's a devastating situation. It may look like there's no way. It may look like there's no hope. But I've been way before you ever left Egypt. I had people out here digging these wells long time before you got to falling on your faces every night and saying, God, I've made about all the brick I can make. I'm tired of this. Get me out of here. I want to serve you. I want to give you everything within me. He said, long before you ever started that, I was preparing something. I don't know a lot about them, but from what I understand, it takes palm trees a long time to grow. You stop and think, they wasn't just a few. There were 70 palm trees that were scattered around. Somebody done went planting palm trees there a long time ago. Clark, look that up on your phone right quick. How long does it take a palm tree to get grown there? Yeah, he's the only one I'm giving permission to play on the phone. Here in church, everybody else needs to have theirs put up. But from what I understand, it takes a long time. We'll know here in just a minute. At least we'll have somebody else's opinion besides mine. Everything, 10 to 30 years. 10 to 30 years. If it was just 10 years. You stop and think about that. Moses is only away from there 40 years. And if it was 30 years that it took them to get there, of course, they may have been grown for a little while. We don't know. It's very possible that they could have been planted there before Moses ever left Egypt. And he stayed gone for 40 years. And then he come back. And then they went through all the plagues. And then they headed across the wilderness. And God said, if you'll just follow my direction, 40, 50 years ago, I had a man come through. And they went to digging wells. And they went to planting palm trees. And you're going to have a good place to rest. But it's only going to happen if you follow my direction. Because way before you ever started on this, I done had some things planned ahead. Way before you ever started on your life, my friend, God done had some things things planned ahead for you. And he has some things, and it's up to you. If you'll hearken to his voice, if you'll listen to him, if you'll obey his word. He said, I've got some things planned out there for you that'll go beyond your wildest dreams. And some of y'all, if it happened before you was born, that was a long time ago. But you know what? God knew. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us. Now, I know there's a few around here that's familiar. Building process. And there's a long time between when the dozer, backhoe, whatever, comes in to clear the lot to the time people move in the house. The Bible said that he was slain before the foundation of the world. First thing you do after you clear the lot is you dig the foundation. You don't start on the house, you dig it. So if it was before the foundation, it's before the lot was even cleared. Before there's any plans drawn out for the world. He said, I already paid the price for your sin. I already had plans for you to go to heaven. I already made the map and the road for you to go. I already sought out the direction and placed it in your life. And now, if you'll just follow after me, you'll wind up right where I want you to wind up. Now let's go to Jeremiah chapter 29. Jeremiah 29, verse 10. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you, in causing you to return to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. He said, I've got an end I expect you to get to. But it's up to you to get there. Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me. He's telling you now how to get to that expected end. And ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord. And I will turn away your captivity. And I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord. And I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. Now look at that. He said, I've got an expected end for you. And then he's saying, I've caused you to be carried away captive. Said, I've caused some things to come your way because I have such an expected end for you, that I've caused some things to come your way to turn you around. I've caused some things to happen to get your attention. I know you don't like it. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's embarrassing. I know it's life-threatening. I know it's harsh. I know it's terrible. But he said, because I have an expected end, I've caused you to be carried away captive. But he said, if you'll begin to seek me, if you'll begin to desire me while you're in your captive state, while you're carried away, while you're in trouble, while you're in tough shape, if you'll begin to seek me, he said, you're going to find me. If you'll begin to search for me, I'll be found of you. If you'll begin to pray and you'll begin to reach out, I'll begin to hearken to you. I'll listen to you. And when you get desperate enough, I'll bring you back to my expected end. I'll bring you, he said, I'll seek you out from every nation where you're carried into, and I'll bring you back to this place. We get our feelings hurt sometime at some of the things we go through. But God, I thought you loved me. Ever wondered what he thought? Maybe he's saying, but I thought you loved me. Because if you love me, you will keep my commandments. I thought you loved me. But since you was thinking you was loving other things more than me, just let them come get you and carry you away. Matter of fact, y'all read what I read. Not only, he said, well, I let them, but the last part of verse 14 there, he said, I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. He said, I said, hey, come over here, get them. Come get them. Get them, take them away. We feel like sometimes we've been drugged through the mud. What? You have. We feel like sometimes we've been drugged through the briar patches and all that. You have. God said, hey, they love you better than me. Come get them. But there ain't nowhere he can take you to. What God don't know where you are. Because he said, I'll go and I'll find you. I'll give you, let's see, where was it? The upper part, and I will be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places, whether I have driven you. He said, it don't matter that you ain't next door anymore. You may be 3 nations over, but he said, I know where you are. And when you begin to cry out to me, I'll come get you and I'll bring you back and I'll set you back where you was, and we'll get everything straightened out. We'll get it all fixed up. Oh, let me tell you something. Sometimes it's good for us to reevaluate and say, God, I just need to seek you a little more, because I know that this ain't really, I don't think, where you really had in mind for me to go. This ain't that expected place. This ain't that place you really had. I think it's a little rougher than what you had planned for me. So God, I'm going to seek you. I'm going to cry out to you. I'm going to give myself to you, and I'm going to let you begin to pull me back in and direct me back to the place that you had for me. We could cover lots of other situations of kings and of men prophets and of different things that the Bible shows us, where that when they got to places they were going, God had something ready for them. God had provision that was already there. Sometimes it was a natural thing that was there. Sometimes it was something somebody put there. And sometimes it was the enemy that was there, but God used it for good. I've finished our New Testament reading, and I'm starting now and reading through the Old Testament. Just today, I was reading, I got to listening, and if you just go through some of that, you think almost, man, God was just giving them good excuses to go stone somebody. I mean, anything they done, just about it. Tear them out and stone them. Work on the Sabbath day, carry them out and stone them. I mean, it's in there, I mean, it's just, and everything, just go stone them. Go stone them. So, it wouldn't have to be a big surprise to know that someone that is a harlot, I mean, if they just caught them in adultery, they stoned them. So what would they have done with someone that was a harlot? But who gave provision to the two spies that went into the city of Jericho the second time around? Rahab the harlot. Don't even call her by her last name. Don't even give her who her family was. It just simply says, Rahab the harlot. Someone that the devil had his way with in their life. God took them and made provision for his people. Look in the New Testament. When nobody else wanted to give due honor to Jesus. Once again, don't give us a lot about her family. It just says Mary, who had 7 devils cast out. Demonic person came to give God glory when no one else would. The plan that he had. You see what I'm saying? You look all through, and I'm just popping off a couple of things there to let you see. Yes, there's things by nature. There's things, what took care of Jonah when he was sitting there waiting on fire and brimstone to fall on Nineveh? A gourd grew up and gave him shadow. And then God also let a worm come up, kill the gourd. You see, God working things. He has Jonah, I don't know exactly how long, but by reading what took on there, I don't really figure that Jonah just sashayed through. But I figure Jonah was preaching with diligence. By the time he got to the other side of the city, he'd probably been preaching for about 2 days. Because the Bible says it was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey, and he went into a day's journey and began to preach. So he had 2 days' journey to get out the other side of it. If he'd been preaching for 2 days, he needed a little rest. I would say after about 30 minutes, I'm ready for rest, but y'all probably all wonder how I lived. I don't quit in 30 minutes most of the time. I should, but I don't. But, what I'm saying is God provided him cover for him a rest. And then he said, now it's time to get up and go. And he sent the worm along to take care of the gourd. It's time to move on, Jonah. God can use anything that's out there for your provision. And he has planned for that. If we'll just hearken to his voice. If we don't hearken, sometimes he has provisions for that too. The Bible said he'd prepared a great fish for Jonah. After 3 days in the belly of that whale, he decided it wouldn't be so bad to go to Nineveh to preach after all. That would beat where he was. You see, God has a way of bringing us and directing us. But he's not going to make you. God gave a prophet warning. Go in, you preach, and you get out. You don't stay the night. You don't go into nobody's house and eat. You go in, you preach, and you get out of there. He went in, he preached, and he got out of there, but he turned around and went back in there, and before he got back out of there, the Bible said a lion had ate him. I don't have no record of that lion spitting him back out and him going on preaching somewhere else. It was 48 young people. People of God. Children. Israelites. They came out. They began to mock. Go up, old bald head. Better watch what you say about bald head. The Bible said 2 she-bears come out of the woods. Eat them up.